I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd smile while planning revenge. But there I was, standing in my kitchen on December 28th, watching my husband Trevor casually destroy what was left of my dignity, and all I could do was smile. "So, babe, I was thinking," Trevor said, not even looking up from his phone as he leaned against the counter. "Vanessa's going to join us for New Year's Eve dinner." My knife stopped mid-chop. A piece of carrot sat there on my cutting board, half sliced, frozen in time just like me. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, that familiar rush of heat that came whenever her name entered our house. "Oh?" I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. "Yeah, she mentioned she didn't have plans and I thought it would be nice. You know, intimate dinner, just the three of us. Like old times." He finally glanced up and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach turn. Excitement. He was actually excited about this. I put down the knife carefully, wiped my hands on my apron, and turned to face him with the biggest smile I could create. "Of course, that sounds wonderful." Trevor blinked. He'd clearly expected a fight. "Really? You're okay with it?" "Why wouldn't I be?" I said, picking up the knife again and continuing to chop. "Vanessa's your friend. It's just dinner." Just dinner. Just like it was just coffee last week when he said he was meeting a client. Just like it was just a quick phone call when he stepped outside at our anniversary dinner last month. Just like it was just a coincidence when she showed up at our wedding 8 years ago, wearing white. I'm not stupid. I never have been. But somewhere along the way, I'd convinced myself that being the understanding wife, the cool wife, the wife who didn't make waves, would be enough. That if I just loved Trevor hard enough, was patient enough, was secure enough in our marriage, he'd eventually see that I was the one who mattered. But as I chopped vegetables with mechanical precision, listening to Trevor happily text Vanessa back with a huge grin on his face, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I'd been playing a game where the rules were designed for me to lose. "I'm going to make it really special," I said, my voice sweet as honey. "Her favorite wine, that pasta dish she loved the time she came over for your birthday. I'll make sure everything's perfect." Trevor looked at me like I'd just given him the greatest gift. He walked over and kissed my forehead. "You're amazing, you know that. This is why I love you. You're so understanding." Understanding. The word tasted like poison. After he left the kitchen, whistling happily, I stood there alone with my half-chopped vegetables. My hands were shaking now, the smile finally dropping from my face. I thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The time I found her lipstick in his car and he said she must have dropped it when he gave her a ride. The late-night phone calls he took in the garage. The way his face lit up every single time her name appeared on his screen. A brightness that had stopped appearing when he looked at me years ago. I picked up my phone and called Amy. "Girl, please tell me you're calling to say you've come to your senses about that man," Amy answered on the first ring. "He invited Vanessa to New Year's Eve dinner," I said flatly. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what? He invited his ex-girlfriend to your New Year's Eve dinner? The woman who's been circling your marriage like a shark for 8 years? That's the one. And you said no, right? You told him absolutely not. That's insane. That's disrespectful, that you won't tolerate." I said yes. More silence. Longer this time. "Laura, honey, have you completely lost your mind?" I started chopping again, harder this time. "Maybe. Or maybe I've finally found it. What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired, Amy. I'm tired of being the understanding one, the patient one, the one who swallows every little humiliation because I don't want to be the jealous wife. I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's right in front of my face. So you're going to let her come to dinner, let her sit at your table, and I flirt with your husband while you serve them food?" "Something like that," I said. Then I told her my plan. By the time I hung up, Amy was cackling so hard she could barely breathe. "You're brilliant," she kept saying. "You're absolutely brilliant, and I take back everything I said about you being a doormat." That night, I lay in bed next to Trevor, listening to him snore. He'd come to bed in a good mood, humming, already planning what he'd wear for the dinner. At one point, he'd tried to kiss me. Really kiss me, with an enthusiasm he hadn't shown in months. I turned away, claiming a headache. Now, in the darkness, I thought about the first time I'd met Vanessa. It was 6 months after Trevor and I started dating. He'd said she was just an old friend, that they'd dated briefly but it didn't work out, that she was cool with him moving on. She'd shown up at the coffee shop where we were meeting, all long legs and designer clothes and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So you're the new girlfriend," she'd said, looking me up and down like I was something she might buy if the price was right. "Trevor has a type, I see." I should have paid attention to the way Trevor had blushed, to the way he'd avoided my eyes, to the way Vanessa touched his arm just a second too long when she said goodbye. But I was young and in love and stupid enough to believe that the past stayed in the past. Over the years, I'd watched her insert herself into our lives like a splinter that wouldn't come out. She called when she needed advice. She showed up at his office with lunch. She texted him about her problems, her successes, her dating life. And Trevor, my husband, ate it up. He loved being her hero, her confidant, her what might have been. And I let him, because I was the cool wife, the understanding wife, the wife who didn't make scenes, but that was ending. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, the light making Trevor stir slightly but not wake. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for, Bradley Morrison. I'd met Bradley 2 months ago at a charity event I'd organised for work. He was charming, successful, and when we'd exchanged business cards for a potential marketing collaboration, he'd shown me a picture of his fiancée with pure love in his eyes. "I'm the luckiest man alive," he'd said. "Vanessa's amazing. We're getting married in the spring." I'd looked at the photo on his phone, and my blood had run cold. It was her, Trevor's Vanessa, the woman who was supposedly so happy in her new relationship, but still called my husband at midnight. The woman who was engaged but somehow still had time to grab coffee with her ex-boyfriend every week. I'd smiled at Bradley and congratulated him, and we'd exchanged numbers. At the time, I didn't know why I was keeping his contact information. Maybe some part of me knew this moment would come. Maybe some part of me had already started planning. Now, staring at his name in my phone, I made my decision. My finger hovered over the call button for just a moment before I set the phone down. Not tonight. Tomorrow I'd make the call. Tomorrow I'd set everything in motion. Tomorrow I'd stop being the understanding wife and become something else entirely. I smiled in the darkness, and this time, it was real. The next morning, December 29th, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Trevor was already in the shower, singing off-key, probably already thinking about Vanessa sitting at our dining table tomorrow night. I listened to him for a moment, and instead of the usual sadness that had become my constant companion, I felt something different. Power. I made coffee and toast, acting like nothing had changed. Trevor came downstairs already dressed, his hair styled with more product than usual for a regular workday. "Big meeting today?" I asked innocently. "Just want to look sharp," he said, checking his reflection in the microwave door. "You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. He wanted to look good for the inevitable phone call or text exchange with Vanessa about tomorrow's dinner. I handed him his coffee with a smile that made him relax. He thought he'd won. He thought I'd rolled over and accepted this humiliation like I'd accepted all the others. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my phone. My hands were steadier than I expected as I dialed Bradley's number. It rang 3 times and I almost hung up. Almost. "Bradley Morrison," he answered in that professional lawyer voice. "Bradley, hi. This is Laura Bennett. We met at the charity auction a couple months back. You were interested in my firm handling some marketing for your practice." "Laura? Of course I remember. How are you?" His voice warmed immediately. He was one of those genuinely nice people, which made what I was about to do feel slightly awful. But only slightly. "I'm wonderful, thank you. Listen, I know this is short notice, but my husband and I are hosting an intimate New Year's Eve dinner tomorrow night, and I'd love for you and your fiancé to join us." There was a pause. "That's very kind of you. Let me just check with Vanessa. Hold on." I heard muffled voices in the background. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear Vanessa's tone shift from casual to sharp. My heart pounded. This was the moment. If she convinced him to say no, my entire plan collapsed. Bradley came back on the line. "She says she actually already has plans for New Year's Eve, but I'm sure we can work something out. Where is this dinner?" I gave him my address, speaking slowly and clearly. Another pause. Longer this time. "Wait. This is funny. Vanessa says her plans are at this exact same address. Small world. She's having dinner with old friends. I guess you must know each other?" I smiled at my reflection in the kitchen window. "Yes, we know each other through mutual connections. I thought it would be lovely to all celebrate together. Much more fun than separate dinners, don't you think?" "Absolutely. This works out perfectly then. Vanessa's been so secretive about these friends from her past. I'm excited to finally meet them. What time should we arrive?" 7 o'clock. And Bradley? I'm really looking forward to it. Me too. Thank you for the invitation, Laura. This is very thoughtful. If only he knew. I hung up and immediately texted Amy. It's done. He said yes. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, you're insane. I love it. Need me to come over? Yes. Shopping first, then prep work. Amy arrived within the hour, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement people get when they're about to witness drama that doesn't directly involve them. We drove to the fancy grocery store across town, the one where everything costs twice as much but tastes 3 times better. Okay, walk me through this again, Amy said, as I carefully selected the most expensive bottle of Pinot Noir on the shelf. You've invited the fiancé that Vanessa has apparently never mentioned to Trevor? Correct. And Trevor has no idea Vanessa is even engaged because she's conveniently never brought it up during their little coffee dates and midnight phone calls. And Bradley has no idea that these old friends include Vanessa's ex-boyfriend who she's clearly not over. Also correct. I added a second bottle of wine to the cart, and I'm going to watch it all unfold over my homemade butternut squash ravioli. Amy grabbed my arm, stopping me in the middle of the pasta aisle. Laura, are you absolutely sure about this? Because once you light this match, there's no putting out the fire. I thought about last night, lying in bed next to a man who was probably dreaming about another woman. I thought about 8 years of swallowing my pride, my hurt, my anger. I thought about every time I'd made myself smaller so Trevor could feel bigger. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We spent the next 3 hours shopping. I bought ingredients for Vanessa's favourite dishes, the ones Trevor had mentioned over the years in those casual ways that felt like little stabs each time. I knew her favourite wine, her favourite appetizer, her favourite dessert. I'd absorbed all of it, filed it away like evidence in a case I didn't know I was building. Back home, Amy helped me start the prep work while I explained the menu. You're making her favourite meal? Amy asked, confused. I thought this was revenge, not a tribute. It is revenge, I said, chopping shallots with precision, because every perfect bite she takes tomorrow night is going to taste like ashes when Bradley realizes what's been going on. I want her to see exactly what she's losing. You're diabolical. I'm tired of being nice. We spent the afternoon cooking and preparing, making everything that could be made ahead. Amy kept looking at me like I was a stranger, and maybe I was. Maybe the Laura who would have cried in the bathroom and served dinner with a brave smile had finally died. Maybe this new version of me had been waiting to emerge for 8 years. Trevor came home around 6 earlier than usual. He walked into the kitchen and stopped, staring at all the food. Wow, you're really going all out, he said, and I heard something in his voice. Guilt, maybe, or awareness that he was asking too much. I want everything to be perfect, I said sweetly. After all, it's not every day we get to spend New Year's Eve with Vanessa. He shifted uncomfortably. You know, if you're not okay with this, we can cancel. I don't want you to feel... Trevor. I turned to face him, my smile warm and genuine looking. I'm fine. Really. I want to do this. The relief on his face was almost comical. He wanted to believe me so badly, wanted to think he could have both his wife and his emotional affair without consequences. Men are simple creatures sometimes. That evening, after Amy left and the food was prepped, I took a long bath. I shaved my legs, deep conditioned my hair, painted my nails a deep red. I'd bought a new dress for tomorrow, black and elegant, the kind that made me feel powerful. It was hanging on the bathroom door, and I looked at it as I soaked in lavender-scented water. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Tomorrow night, all the lies and half-truths and secret text messages would come crashing down. Tomorrow night, Trevor would have to choose, and for once it wouldn't be on his terms. I heard him moving around in the bedroom, probably trying on different outfits for tomorrow. The thought made me laugh, a sound that echoed strangely in the bathroom. I got out of the tub and wrapped myself in a towel, looking at my reflection in the steamed-up mirror. I wiped it clear with my hand and stared at myself. My eyes looked different. Harder. Determined. Tomorrow, I whispered to my reflection. When I came to bed, Trevor was already under the covers, scrolling through his phone with that little smile he got when he was texting her. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. Vanessa's really excited about tomorrow, he said, still looking at his screen. She says she's looking forward to spending time with us. With you. I'm looking forward to it too, I said, sliding into bed beside him. It's going to be a night nobody forgets. He finally put down his phone and looked at me. You're being amazing about this, you know that? A lot of wives would be threatened by their husband staying friends with an ex. I smiled in the darkness. I'm not threatened by Vanessa. And I wasn't. Not anymore. Because tomorrow night I wasn't just serving dinner. I was serving truth, ice cold and impossible to swallow. Tomorrow night, the real feast would begin. New Year's Eve arrived with clear skies and cold air, the kind of perfect winter day that felt like the universe was setting the stage for something significant. I woke up before Trevor, my mind already running through the evening's timeline like a general preparing for battle. Trevor was different this morning. Nervous energy radiated off him as he moved around the bedroom, opening drawers and closing them, checking his phone every 30 seconds. I watched him from the bed, noting how he'd already showered and shaved even though it was barely 8 in the morning. "You're up early," I observed. He jumped slightly like he'd forgotten I was there. "Just want to make sure everything's ready. You need help with anything?" "I've got it under control." I stretched and got out of bed, moving past him to the bathroom. In the mirror, I could see him behind me, holding up 2 different shirts, his forehead creased with concentration. "Which one?" he asked, holding up a blue button-down and a grey one. "The blue," I said. "It brings out your eyes." His face lit up with that boyish excitement that used to make my heart flutter. Now it just made me sad. He was choosing his outfit for her, not for me, and we both knew it even if he'd never admitted out loud. I spent the morning finishing the food preparations, moving through my kitchen with mechanical efficiency. The butternut squash ravioli was perfect, the sauce was simmering, the salad was prepped. I'd made a chocolate torte because Vanessa had mentioned once 3 years ago at some dinner party that it was her favourite dessert. Trevor had remembered and told me about it later, not realising how that casual comment would sit in my chest like a stone. Around 2 in the afternoon, I went upstairs to get ready. I took my time, treating each step like armour I was putting on. The shower, the lotion, the makeup applied with careful precision. I dried my hair until it fell in smooth waves around my shoulders, then stepped into the black dress I'd bought. It fit perfectly. Elegant, sophisticated, powerful. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror and barely recognised the woman staring back. She looked confident, in control. Nothing like the woman who'd been shrinking herself for 8 years. I heard Trevor in the other bathroom, also getting ready. The sound of running water, the electric razor, the cabinet opening and closing as he used more cologne than usual. I wondered if he could smell his own desperation. By 6 o'clock, the house was ready. Candles were lit, the table was set with our good china, soft music played in the background. It looked like a scene from a magazine. Everything perfect and beautiful and completely fake. Trevor came downstairs at 6:15 and I had to admit he looked good. The blue shirt, dark slacks, hair styled just right. He'd dressed for an occasion, for someone special. Just not for his wife. "You look beautiful," he said when he saw me, and I could tell he meant it. But there was something else in his eyes, something distracted, like he was already thinking about who else would see me tonight. "Thank you. So do you." He moved around the living room, adjusting pillows that didn't need adjusting, checking his phone, looking out the window. The nervous energy was almost funny. I'd never seen him this worked up, not even before our wedding. At 6:28, headlights swept across our front window. Trevor practically jumped. "She's here," he said, and the excitement in his voice was like a knife. I took a deep breath and smoothed down my dress. Showtime. I let Trevor answer the door while I stayed in the kitchen, listening to the sound of her voice carrying through the house like poison. "Trevor! Oh my God, you look amazing!" I counted to 5, then walked out to greet our guest. Vanessa stood in our entryway like she owned it, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was perfect, everything about her screamed expensive and untouchable. She had her hand on Trevor's arm, laughing at something he'd said, and when she saw me, her smile didn't change but her eyes did. "Laura, thank you so much for having me." She air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming and cloying. "This is so sweet of you. Not every wife would be comfortable with this." "I'm very secure in my marriage," I said with a smile that was all teeth. She looked around our living room with the kind of casual assessment that felt invasive. "You've redecorated since I was last here. It's nice." Nice. The word dripped with condescension. Trevor offered her wine, which she accepted with a flutter of eyelashes that made me want to scream. They settled on the couch, falling into easy conversation about her boutique, some mutual friend's new boat, a restaurant they both apparently loved. I sat in the chair across from them, watching Trevor lean toward her, watching his face light up when she laughed, watching him be more animated than I'd seen him in months. I checked my watch. 6:45. 15 minutes until Bradley arrived. "So, Vanessa," I said during a lull in their conversation, "how's Bradley?" She froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Trevor looked confused. "Who's Bradley?" he asked. "Her fiancé," I said pleasantly. "They're getting married in the spring, right, Vanessa?" The colour drained from her face. Yes. He's fine. "How did you—" "We met at a charity event a few months ago. Lovely man. Very handsome. Very successful." I sipped my own wine. "I'm surprised you've never mentioned him to Trevor. You two talk so often." Trevor was looking between us now, confusion shifting into something else, something that looked like the first stirrings of understanding. "You're engaged?" he asked Vanessa, and there was hurt in his voice. Actual hurt that she hadn't told him. "It's new," she said quickly. "Recent. I was going to tell you. The doorbell rang. The sound cut through the room like a gunshot. Vanessa's eyes went wide. Trevor looked at me with growing suspicion. "Who's that?" he asked. I stood up, smoothing my dress, enjoying the moment. "Oh, didn't I mention? I invited a few more people. I thought it would be nice to make it a real party." I walked to the door, feeling their eyes on my back. My hand was steady as I reached for the doorknob. This was it. The moment everything changed. I opened the door to find Bradley standing there with a bottle of expensive champagne and a warm smile. He was tall, well-dressed, exactly the kind of man you'd expect Vanessa to end up with. Successful, stable, completely unaware that his fiancée was in love with someone else. "Laura, Happy New Year!" He kissed my cheek warmly. "Thank you again for the invitation. This is so much better than whatever Vanessa had planned." "Actually," I said, stepping aside to let him in, "Vanessa's already here. This is the dinner she was planning to attend." I watched his face process that information, saw the moment of confusion before the smile returned. "Oh, well, that's convenient." He walked into the living room, and I followed, watching everything unfold like a movie I'd already seen. Bradley's face when he saw Vanessa on the couch next to Trevor, sitting just a little too close, Vanessa's face going from pale to ghost white, Trevor's face cycling through confusion, realization, and the dawning horror of understanding. "Vanessa, sweetheart." Bradley crossed to her, leaning down to kiss her. She turned her head at the last second so his lips caught her cheek instead of her mouth. "You didn't tell me this was the dinner you had planned, and you must be Trevor." He extended his hand to my husband, genuine and friendly. Trevor shook it mechanically, his eyes meeting mine across the room with something that looked like panic. "I've heard so much about you," Bradley continued, settling into the chair I'd vacated. "Vanessa talks about you constantly. Old friends are so important, don't you think?" The silence that followed was delicious. I excused myself to check on dinner, leaving the three of them sitting there in the ruins of their comfortable lies. In the kitchen, I allowed myself a small smile as I stirred the sauce. The real dinner was just beginning. I took my time in the kitchen, letting the tension in the living room build like pressure in a pot about to boil over. Through the doorway, I could hear Bradley's cheerful voice carrying the conversation, completely oblivious to the fact that the other two people were barely breathing. When I returned with appetizers, the scene was exactly as I'd imagined. Vanessa sat rigid on the couch, her wine glass clutched so tightly I thought it might shatter. Trevor had moved to the other end of the sofa, putting distance between them now that Bradley was here. And Bradley sat comfortable and relaxed, talking about his day like this was a normal dinner party. "These look amazing, Laura," Bradley said, taking a bruschetta from the plate I offered. "Vanessa's always saying how she can never find good Italian food in this city. You'll have to give her your recipes." Vanessa made a small choking sound. I smiled sweetly at her. "Of course. We should get together more often, actually." "The four of us?" Trevor's eyes shot to mine, wide with something between fear and anger. I held his gaze steadily, watching him realize that I knew everything, that I'd always known everything, that I was done pretending. We moved to the dining table and I'd planned the seating carefully. Bradley and Vanessa on one side, Trevor and I on the other, facing them like we were in some kind of formal negotiation, which, in a way, we were. I served the first course while Bradley launched into the story of his proposal to Vanessa. It had been at a beach resort in Hawaii, Sunset, the whole romantic production. He told it with such genuine love in his voice that I almost felt bad for him. Almost. "I was so nervous," he laughed, reaching over to squeeze Vanessa's hand. She flinched slightly but didn't pull away. "I'd been carrying that ring around for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. And Vanessa was so surprised, weren't you, honey? Very surprised, she said through gritted teeth. She actually cried, Bradley continued, oblivious. Happy tears, of course, though she seemed almost reluctant at first, which I understood. Big commitment and all. But she came around. Trevor was gripping his fork like a weapon. When was this? September, Bradley said. September 15th, to be exact. Best day of my life. I watched Trevor's face carefully. September 15th was the day after he and Vanessa had their famous coffee meeting that had lasted 3 hours. The one where he'd come home distracted and distant and had picked a fight with me over nothing. That's beautiful, I said. And you set a wedding date? We did, actually. Just a few weeks ago, Bradley beamed. June 23rd. Vanessa finally committed to a date after some helpful advice from an old friend. Trevor's fork clattered onto his plate. What? Bradley turned to him with that open, friendly smile. Yeah, Vanessa told me about your phone call. Early December, right? She said you really helped her work through her cold feet, helped her realize what she wanted. The silence was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. I took a sip of wine, watching Trevor's face cycle through a dozen different emotions. Vanessa was staring at her plate like she could disappear into it. That's not, Trevor started, then stopped. His eyes met Vanessa's across the table and something passed between them. Something desperate and guilty and full of secrets. Bradley didn't notice. He was warming to his topic now, maybe loosened by the excellent wine I'd served. Actually, Trevor, I owe you a real thanks. That conversation changed everything for Vanessa. She came home that night different somehow, more settled. She actually cried again, told me she knew what she wanted now, and the next morning she agreed to set the date. What exactly did they talk about? I asked innocently. In that phone call? Vanessa's head snapped up. Bradley, maybe we shouldn't… Oh, Vanessa's just embarrassed, Bradley said, waving her off. She told me she called you because she was having doubts about us, about getting married. She wanted perspective from someone who knew her well, who'd dated her before. Trevor looked like he might be sick. I could see his mind working, trying to figure out how much Bradley actually knew, how much Vanessa had told him. And what advice did you give her, Trevor? I asked, my voice still sweet and innocent. I don't really remember, Trevor mumbled. Really? Bradley seemed surprised. Vanessa said it was a long conversation, over an hour. She said you talked about relationships, about making choices, about… He paused, trying to remember. What was it you said, honey? Something about following your heart? Vanessa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need to use the restroom. She practically fled from the table. Bradley looked confused for the first time. Is she okay? Wedding stress, probably, I said smoothly. It's a lot of pressure. Bradley nodded, but I could see the first seeds of doubt creeping into his expression. He looked at Trevor, really looked at him. And I saw the lawyer in him start to emerge, the one who noticed details, who read people for a living. How long did you and Vanessa date? Bradley asked casually. Trevor shifted in his seat. A couple years, in our 20s, long time ago. And you stayed close after? We're friends, that's all. Good friends, I interjected. They talk at least once a week, sometimes more. They have coffee together, lunch meetings. Trevor values her opinion on everything from business decisions to what tie to wear. Trevor's face flushed red. Laura, it's wonderful, I continued, ignoring him, that they've maintained such a close friendship after all these years. Not many exes can do that. It takes a special kind of connection. Bradley's expression was changing now, the friendliness hardening into something more analytical. Once a week? Vanessa never mentioned that, didn't she? I tilted my head. That's strange. I would think you'd know about your fiancé's close male friendships. Laura, stop, Trevor said, his voice low and urgent. Stop what? I'm just making conversation. I turned to Bradley with wide, innocent eyes. Did Vanessa tell you that Trevor still has the photo of them from college in his wallet? Or that she sends him good morning texts most days? Or that she called him crying at midnight 2 weeks ago because she was having doubts about the wedding? Trevor stood up so fast his chair fell backward. That's enough. Bradley stood too, but slower, his whole demeanour shifted. The friendly dinner guest was gone, replaced by a man who'd just realised he'd been lied to. Is this true? Bradley, I can explain. Vanessa's voice came from the doorway. She was back from the bathroom, her makeup freshly fixed, but her eyes were red. Explain what? Bradley's voice was cold now. Explain why my fiancé has been having an emotional affair with her ex-boyfriend? Explain why you've been lying to me for months about your relationship with him? It's not like that, Vanessa said, but her voice was weak. Then what is it like? Bradley turned to Trevor. That phone call in December. What did you really talk about? Trevor looked at Vanessa, then at me, then back at Bradley. I could see him trying to calculate what to say, how to minimize the damage, but there was no minimizing this. Not anymore. Tell him, I said quietly. Tell him what you told Vanessa that night. Trevor's face crumbled. We talked about feelings, about the past. What feelings? Bradley demanded. The words hung in the air, waiting. Vanessa was crying now, silent tears running down her perfect face. Trevor looked broken, caught between two versions of himself. And I sat there, watching my carefully constructed plan unfold exactly as I'd designed it, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Trevor's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. The silence stretched so long I could hear the candles flickering on the table. Finally, Vanessa spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Bradley, please, can we talk about this privately? No. Bradley's voice was sharp, nothing like the warm man who'd walked through my door an hour ago. I want to hear it here. I want to hear the truth from both of you right now. What did you talk about in December, Trevor? Trevor's eyes found mine across the table. And in them I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear that he was about to lose everything. Good. I told her. He swallowed hard. I told her that I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together, if I'd made a different choice. The words landed like bombs. Bradley took a step back, his face going pale. Vanessa let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp, and I sat perfectly still, watching my marriage implode in real time. You told my fiancé that you regret not being with her? Bradley's voice was dangerously quiet now. While she was engaged to me? While you're married? It wasn't like that, Trevor said desperately. She called me upset, confused about the wedding, and I was honest. I told her I understood because I've had those same questions. What same questions? I asked, my voice cutting through the room like glass. Everyone turned to look at me. Say it out loud, Trevor. Tell everyone what questions you've been asking yourself for 8 years. Laura, don't... Tell them! My composure finally cracked, my voice rising. Tell Bradley and Vanessa what you've been thinking every time you look at me. Tell them about the text messages I found 3 months ago. The ones where you told her you think about her every day. Where you said marrying me was the practical choice, but she was the one who got away. Trevor's face went white. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. Bradley stood frozen, processing information that was destroying his world piece by piece. You went through my phone. Trevor's voice was weak, defensive. Your phone? I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to my own ears. You left it on the bathroom counter while you were in the shower. Your precious Vanessa sent you a heart emoji at 6 in the morning, and when I opened the message, I found 6 months of conversations that would make any wife physically ill. I pulled out my own phone, my hands shaking now with rage I'd been containing for too long. Should I read some highlights? There's the one from October where you told her you married me because I was stable and safe, but you've never felt with me what you felt with her. Or the one from August where you said you dream about her. Or my personal favourite from November, where she asked if you'd leave me if she asked you to, and you said, "Stop!" Vanessa screamed, "Just stop! Bradley, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Bradley's voice broke. "Explain how you've been telling another man you love him while wearing my ring? Explain how you've been planning our wedding while emotionally cheating on me?" "I never said I loved him," Vanessa protested weakly. I scrolled through my phone where I'd screenshotted every message before Trevor had the chance to delete them. December 3rd. Vanessa wrote, "I love you. You know that, right?" "I always have." Trevor responded, "I know. I love you too. I'm sorry for everything." The room exploded. Bradley turned on Vanessa with such fury she stumbled backward. "You told him you love him while you're engaged to me." "It's not the same," she sobbed. "It's different. It's complicated. We have history." "We were building a future," Bradley shouted. "Or I thought we were." "Was any of it real? Or were you just using me as a consolation prize while you pined after him?" Trevor tried to speak. "Bradley, listen, I never meant—" "Don't." Bradley held up his hand. "Don't say another word to me. You've been having an affair with my fiancé behind both our backs. Emotional or physical, I don't care. You're both liars." "We never slept together," Vanessa said desperately. "Not since we got back in touch. Never. It was just talking, just talking." I stood up now, my chair scraping back. "You talked to him more than you talked to your fiancé. You shared things with him you should have shared with Bradley. You called him when you were sad, happy, confused, drunk. You were more in a relationship with my husband than you were with your own fiancé. My voice was shaking, tears threatening to spill over. But I refused to let them fall. Not now. Not here. And you. I turned to Trevor, and he actually flinched. You stood in a church 8 years ago and promised to love me, honour me, forsake all others, and every single day since then, you've been wondering if you made a mistake. Every time you looked at me, you were seeing her. Every time you touched me, you were wishing I was her. That's not true, Trevor said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Don't lie anymore. I slammed my hand on the table, making the china rattle. I've spent 8 years being the understanding wife, the patient wife, the wife who pretended not to notice that her husband's heart belonged to someone else. I made myself smaller and quieter and more convenient because I thought if I just loved you enough, you'd eventually choose me for real. But you never did you? Trevor's face crumbled. Laura, I do love you. Stop. My voice was ice now. Don't insult me by lying anymore. You love the idea of me. You love that I'm stable and supportive and that I make your life easy. But you're not in love with me. You've never been in love with me. And I'm done pretending that's enough. The silence that followed was deafening. Bradley stood there looking shattered, his perfect life crumbling around him. Vanessa was crying openly now, mascara running down her face, all her sophistication stripped away, and Trevor just stood there, unable to deny what I'd said because we both knew it was true. I want a divorce, I said clearly. Trevor's head snapped up. What? No, Laura, we can fix this. Fix what? I laughed bitterly. Fix the fact that you're in love with another woman? Fix 8 years of being second choice? Fix the fact that you've been emotionally cheating on me our entire marriage? I'll cut off contact with Vanessa, he said desperately, moving toward me. Completely. I'll never speak to her again. We can go to counselling, we can... I don't want your desperate promises, I said, backing away from him. I don't want to be the woman you settle for because your first choice is marrying someone else. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if you're thinking about her. I'm done, Trevor. We're done. Bradley had been silent, watching this unfold with a kind of horrified fascination. Now he turned to Vanessa. We're leaving. Pack your things from my apartment tomorrow. The wedding's off. Don't contact me. Bradley, no, please. Vanessa grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. You made your choice, he said coldly. You chose him. You've been choosing him all along. So congratulations, you can have him. He walked toward the door and Vanessa looked desperately between him and Trevor. For a moment I thought she might run after Bradley, might try to salvage her engagement, but instead she turned to Trevor, tears streaming down her face. Trevor, she whispered. Tell me this meant something. Tell me I didn't ruin everything for nothing. Trevor looked at her, and I saw it all play out on his face. The longing, the regret, the temptation. He opened his mouth to speak. Don't, I said quietly. Don't do it in my house. He closed his mouth. Vanessa let out a broken sob and ran after Bradley, but he was already gone. His car pulling out of the driveway as she stumbled onto the front lawn in her expensive heels. And then it was just Trevor and me, standing in our dining room surrounded by the ruins of our carefully prepared New Year's Eve dinner. The candles were still burning, the food was getting cold. The clock on the wall showed 11:45. Laura, Trevor said, his voice cracking, please, I know I've been terrible. I know I've hurt you, but I love you. I do. I chose you. I married you. You chose security, I corrected. You married me because Vanessa wasn't available and I was safe and convenient, but you never let her go. Not really. And I've wasted 8 years of my life being your backup plan. I walked past him to the door, grabbing my coat and purse from the closet. Where are you going? He asked desperately. Away from here. Away from you. I turned to look at him one last time. You can have the house tonight. I'll send my lawyer's information next week. It's New Year's Eve, he said stupidly, like that mattered. Then, it's the perfect time for a new beginning. I walked out into the cold night air, leaving my husband standing alone in the house we'd shared, the life we'd built, the lie we'd lived. I got in my car and drove to Amy's apartment where I knew she'd be waiting with champagne and tissues and the kind of friendship that didn't come with conditions or second place. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over the city, Amy and I stood on her balcony with our glasses raised. To new beginnings, she said. To never being someone's second choice again, I added. We drank and I felt something shift inside me. The pain was there, sharp and real, but underneath it was something else. Relief. Freedom. the knowledge that I'd finally chosen myself. My phone buzzed. Trevor calling desperately. I declined it and blocked his number. Then I poured another glass of champagne and toasted the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. 3 months later, I'd signed the divorce papers and moved into a bright apartment downtown. I'd heard through mutual friends that Vanessa and Bradley had broken up and that she'd been trying to contact Trevor. I'd also heard that Trevor had been desperately trying to reach me, leaving messages with friends, sending flowers to my office, even showing up at my new place once before I threatened to call the police. But I'd changed my number, changed my life, changed myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just free. And as I sat in my new apartment, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over a city full of possibilities, I realized that the best revenge wasn't destroying Trevor and Vanessa's relationship. It was building a life where they didn't matter at all.